right, everybody, I am back with a brand new DCU update, and today's going to be an interesting video. And I finally was able to take my hat off. My hair was probably the longest it's ever been, and I haven't been able to get out of the house for 3 weeks because I was sick for 2 and then threw out my back, and I just haven't been able to get out of the house. And I can finally stand up and walk again. And I got out of the house and got a haircut, so I don't need my hat anymore. So if I ever wear a hat, you guys can know my hair's getting long. All right, so let's talk about a few things here today. I don't really have a whole lot of graphics to show you. I'm going to show you a couple of pictures, though, things that I've grabbed. And I want to talk about the state of the DCU. And I found an article. Well, actually, one of my followers, my subscribers, and someone who follows me on Twitter, sent me this article today, and we're going to take a look at this article because it perfectly sums up the feelings of what is going on behind the scenes and happening with the DCU and Warner Brothers Discovery in general. And, you know, you constantly hear people out there talk about how the Snyderverse made no money, that it was a box office failure that didn't do well, which is very far from the truth. The films that are coming out now are the films that are not making money and are big failures and not making a profit, and nobody's gravitating towards them. Even though they may not have made as big of a profit as the studio was looking for at the beginning, it drove people into the seats. It is a fact that way more people were going to the theater at the beginning of all of this than they are now. And the fact that everything is changing, and it is, you have the MCU becoming more goofy by the day, and people are turning away from it, and they're turning towards more serious stuff. Zack Snyder was ahead of his time, and if his movies, started today, I think they would be a massive hit. We had Zack Snyder's Justice League. When it got released, everybody agreed. Everybody, critics and everybody agreed that 4-hour version was way better than what they released in theaters in 2017. So you cannot say that the Snyderverse was a failure, and I get tired of seeing people talk about this because it's not. And I use Snyderverse loosely because they didn't just toy with Snyder's films. They toyed with David Ayer, and it just, after Aquaman, just things went to crap. Story-wise, production-wise, everything's gone to crap. It just has. So let's take a look at this, a couple of pictures here, and this is going to be interesting. I'm going to show this article that sums up exactly what's happening. So this is one of the graphics that I wanted to show, and this is really interesting, in regards to what these movies cost to make and what they actually made in theaters. And this is eye-opening. So you had Superman the movie, that originally came out in 1978. It would cost $55 million to make and grossed $300 million. Superman 2, $54 million, made $190 million. Superman 3, which was a terrible film, $39 million to make, made $80 million. And then by the time Superman 4 came out, that it had ruined the franchise, made $17 million to make, and you could tell in the movie, and it made $36 million. They all profited. Then you had Superman Returns, which it didn't resonate with audiences. There was no real action in the film. It was a decent movie. I like the fact that they got somebody who looked like Christopher Reeve as best they could to match it. But it cost $232 million to make and only grossed $391 million. Then we get into Snyder stuff. So Man of Steel cost $225 million to make, which is a pretty high budget. But this was the return of Superman into theaters. And people were worried about, how is this going to relate to Christopher Reeve? Is it going to be a good rendition? But it did gross $668 million. So it made a profit. Then you had Batman vs. Superman, which cost $250 million to make, but made $873 million. Now, people will argue that Batman vs. Superman had a historic drop in the second week, and it did. But it still went on to gross almost $1 billion. These are not failures. And Batman vs. Superman is when the studios started to mess with those films. So the other picture I have for you here before I get into this article that's going to kind of tie into what the graphic I just showed you is that Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, the release date for the film, has been moved up by about a week. So instead of coming out on Christmas Day, it is going to come out on December 20th instead. I don't know what the change is for. I didn't read the article. I don't think that's going to help the movie at all. In fact, I think it's terrible to release movies right at Christmas anyway because people are spending time with family. It's the time of the year where I have the least amount of time to be able to go see films. But that's what they're going to do, and they'll still blame the failure on Snyder fans. All right. So let's look at this article. So this article was done by geekingaroundnetwork.com. I don't know anything about this group, but what they talk about in this article are my exact feelings, and this is going to sum it up. And then I'll kind of, we'll talk about this here at the end. It says, how Warner Brothers Discovery is ruining DC movies and why fans are demanding the Snyderverse back. The Snyderverse has been a hot topic among fans ever since Zack Snyder's Justice League was released on HBO Max. And that's very true. Everybody's been talking about this. The studio is talking about how it was a cul-de-sac. The fans were happy that it came out, and we wanted to see the finish of the story. And it says fans have been clamoring for the restoration of the Snyderverse, even suggesting it to be licensed to Netflix, which would allow Snyder to complete his vision for the DCEU. However, despite the overwhelming support from fans, Warner Brothers and DC seem determined, and they do, to reboot with James Gunn and Peter Safran's DCU, a reboot already surrounded with controversy and drama. Since Zack Snyder stepped down as the director of the DCU, and he was not the director of the DCEU, there were other directors like Wan, like Ayer. It says almost all the movies in the franchise have been box office disappointments, which is a fact. Everything post-Aquaman has been a disappointment. Even the recent Shazam, Fury of the Gods, has made less money than Marvel's worst-performing movie, Morbius. Think about that for a minute. That is huge. This underscores the importance of Snyder's vision and his ability to draw in audiences with his unique storytelling and visual style. Many fans believe that restoring the Snyderverse could be the key to saving the DCEU from its recent string of failures. I absolutely believe that, and I am not the only one. The reboot of DCU began with a lot of drama and controversy with James Gunn, the co-head of DC Studios, when he made the decision to let go of Henry Cavill as Superman. This move was highly criticized by fans and critics. Fans and the general audience, people, who were excited to see Cavill reprise his role, especially since they just had him in Black Adam as the iconic superhero. The decision sparked speculation about the future of the DCU and its direction under Gunn's leadership. Many fans have expressed disappointment in the decision and are calling for the studio to reconsider their choice. Absolutely true. Despite not working with Warner Brothers since stepping down in 2017, Warner Brothers and DC continue to use Zack Snyder, Snyderverse fans, and now Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as scapegoats for their own bad decisions. Finally, somebody is writing about this and not afraid to say it, and I've been talking about this for a long time. People argue that it was Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson who brought Henry Cavill back, and that he used this as a power play, and that he was wrong for not allowing Shazam to be in his movies, or for Black Adam to be in the Shazam movie. And the studio is blaming these people, which is ridiculous, because Warner Brothers Discovery owns these characters. When you had the director of Shazam 2 come out and said, we were originally going to have Hawkman, and I forget who else they were going to have come in from, the Black Adam film, and they basically blamed it on The Rock for not allowing those characters to be in their movies. The Rock doesn't make that decision. Warner Brothers Discovery owns those characters. They don't need The Rock's permission. Even though it was filmed under his studio, they don't own those characters. They don't have to ask for permission. So they're using that as an excuse, and finally people are starting to realize that this is going on. Additionally, if James Gunn's upcoming Superman movie were to underperform, which it's going to, it is almost guaranteed that Warner Brothers and DC will shift the blame to Snyderverse fans, even though Gunn himself claimed that Snyderverse fans are a minority in the larger DC fan community. We hear this all the time, that the DCEU fans are just a minority. If you like Snyder stuff, you're a loser, and you don't make up the majority of the people. But then they'll blame us when something like Shazam fails. It's becoming increasingly clear that instead of taking responsibility for their own poor decision-making and lack of creativity, Warner Brothers and DC are quick to throw others under the bus. The truth is, the so-called real DC fans who criticize Snyderverse fans for not supporting other DC movies are the ones who are failing to show up at the box office for these films. That is a fact. Perhaps it's time for Warner Brothers and DC to listen to the fans and restore the Snyderverse rather than blaming others for their shortcomings. The Snyderverse should be restored because despite not reaching Warner Brothers' high expectations, the movie still performed well at the box office, and their home media sales topped the charts. And people can look at that. You know, if you go look at it, a good way to judge how well a movie does is if people actually want to buy it and own it physically. That is a good gauge as to, because, you know, real media fans are the ones who collect physical media. And if you go and you look at James Gunn's Suicide Squad movie, everyone claims it was a big hit on HBO Max, and it was. But it tanked at the box office. People will claim it's because of COVID. But then if you look at the home video sales, it's garbage. But all the other films, Black Adam sold way more physical copies than you did with the James Gunn's Suicide Squad movie. It's ridiculous. Okay, they are blaming people who are not the ones at fault. It's their own decision-making. It says, the Snyderverse is what makes the DCEU the 9th highest-grossing franchise, and Zack Snyder's Justice League was one of the top-viewed movies on HBO Max. The merchandising did well, too, during a time when even Star Wars merch wasn't doing so great. Fans are craving to see more of Henry Cavill, Ben Affleck, and Gal Gadot. That's why I have the characters behind me. These are all the DCEU characters, okay? And recently, SnyderCon 2, a 3-day charity event, sold out tickets in less than 10 minutes. I think it was closer to 3 minutes of going on sale, despite tickets being, and it says 100, they were 150 each. Yet, another proof of how passionate Snyderverse fans are, not just for Snyder's films, but also for a good cause. If Warner Brothers and DC had stuck to Zack Snyder's original plan, it could have been an even bigger franchise. Restoring the Snyderverse would also show the studios are listening to their fans and respecting the director's artistic vision. It's clear that the Snyderverse has a dedicated fan base, and that restoring it would bring more viewers and revenue to the franchise. That is a fact. All right, guys, as soon as I read this article, I had to post this video because it's very true. I'm not just a Snyder fan. I'm a DCEU fan. Everything after Aquaman has gone in this crooked, weird direction that nobody asked for. Some of the movies have scored pretty high with audiences, but they weren't big audiences. And that's what I mean. If you look at something like James Gunn's Suicide Squad movie, and you look at some of these other films, the audience was minuscule. They may have enjoyed the film, but you have to remember, if you don't have fans buying merchandise, driving people to get comic books or action figures, you're not going to make money. It can't be just the general audience that supports these films, and it's not. You can go for the lowest common denominator, or you can grab the fan base. People have been getting on me in the last couple of days saying I'm a liar, saying I'm not going to support Gunn's DCU. I never said I wasn't going to go see the films, and people are saying I did and that I was not going to support it at all. I never said that. That is not something I ever said or ever committed to. What I said was, and I admitted this because I have a channel like this on YouTube, that I am going to have to go see all of these movies and review them once. Whereas I would see DC films in the past anywhere at a minimum of 2 to 7 times. I don't think there's a single DC movie that I only saw once, except for Justice League. When Justice League came out, that was when things started to change, and I only saw that movie once. After that, nope, it was game over. All those films I saw once, and I'm going to continue to do that until they start listening to the fans. This universe is DOA. I don't see... They're going to have to do something extremely epic with Superman if they expect this new universe to thrive. And I'm telling you right now, audiences are going to be confused. Now, we haven't seen the Flash film. If they don't explain really well what's happening, people are going to be like, what the heck, where's Henry Cavill? what happened to Henry Cavill. Because the last that general audiences saw, they complain that people like us that watch this stuff and are involved and pay attention, that the general audience, they don't see all of this stuff. They don't know what's happening behind the scenes, so they only see what happens at the theater. And when some other person shows up as Superman, they're going to be like, what the heck? Where'd Henry Cavill go? He was supposed to be back, especially if they're going to keep some characters like Amanda Waller, but they're going to change up Superman. Like, this is all messed up. And people are not stupid. People are starting to understand what's going on, and they're not happy. So there's my update for the day. What do you guys think is going on? I do believe that there's going to be a day of reckoning coming up very soon, because they continue to lose money. And if they continue to lose money, they're not going to go down this path. So we got to stay the course. We don't have to support these movies until they start listening. And I would be way more open to this stuff if they would have just finished the freaking storyline from Zack Snyder's Justice League. I want to see Darkseid. I'd like to see something like Mongol. I don't want to see dinosaurs. That's not what I want the Justice League to fight. And I hope they're not going to take us, that movie, the Frontier film, the New Frontier, took place like in the 50s. I don't want a movie taking place in the past. I want to see the Justice League now. We had gold. But the studios interfered, and they would not let the directors do what they needed to do. It's time to bring it all back. All right, that's all I've got for you guys today. I will be back with updates, pretty much almost daily now as all of this information comes out. I do appreciate the support. We will see you on the next video.